is Roch Kubatko. Good evening, Mr. Kubatko.
Hello, gentlemen. How you doing?
Are you enjoying
doing
the show?
well. Talk about the Orioles winning 8 out of 10 versus the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays are saying, what bad starting pitching? Their ERA against us is under 2.
Doesn't make much sense, does it? And I know the cynic would say, well, the Blue Jays just aren't as good this year, which may be true, but they are only 4 under 500, and they're 3.5 back for the second wild card. People that were counting them out in April, I'm like, you know, they're still in this thing. They may still look at themselves as buyers at the deadline here. So it's a curiosity that the Orioles are having this kind of success against them, though, because traditionally they have not. And they've won one series in Toronto, season series, since 2005. They've had so much trouble playing there. And then overall, as you guys were saying, they're 8-2 against them this year. So I don't know how much of that's just kind of a quirky thing, whether it's something else. I mean, Alec Asher had an outstanding start in Toronto, and we know he was kind of up and down with them. Toronto wasn't hitting at all earlier in the season, that's for sure. So, you know, this would be the right time for the Orioles to kind of take advantage and finally kind of pile on against them. I'm sure Toronto looks at where they are in the standings, and, you know, they're 2 games behind the Orioles for 4th place, and think, well, this team's a big reason why we're where we are right now.
Roch, clearly the starting pitching has to be better, and we know that. And maybe we could even say that, well, it has been a little bit better of late. But with Zach Britton on the mend, and it looks like he'll be joining the club right after the 4th of July, if everything stays the way it looks like it's going to, and he's healthy. The addition of Darren O'Day and Zach Britton, pushing Givens and Brock and even Donnie Hart, if he's pitching like he did last year, back a little bit. Those 5 guys, I mean, what does that mean to this club going forward after really not having those guys healthy and in a group for a long period of time?
Yeah, I mean, it makes them so much better. Maybe that just seems like Captain Obvious, but, it does take some pressure off the rotation. I still think they have to be better. You can't have guys getting knocked out in the 3rd inning. Obviously, you can't be down 6-0 in the 1st inning. But if you have a full bullpen, the guys that you projected at the beginning of the year, then you don't need your starters getting you, into the 7th or into the 8th inning, and that's a luxury. But if you can just get, through 5 into the 6th and then have a rested Michael Givens like last night, and you have O'Day, and you have Brock who can work more in the setup role, although it's nice to know that he can close if needed, then you have Britton. And it just makes them so much deeper, and it makes it easier for Buck to have guys available, because there are times, obviously, where he's not going to use certain guys that the team's behind. He tried to avoid using O'Day and Brock, and then later Brock and Givens when O'Day was hurt in the same game. He needed one of them to be available. And when you had, starters going out early, and then you had to use other guys in the pen who were riding that shuttle back and forth, who may not have been ready, who weren't being productive. Plus, you had Ubaldo there for a while, who's not really cut out to be a reliever. And I know people think, well, that's the same as a starter, but especially as a reliever where you use them once, you've got to rest them for 4 or 5 days. I mean, that became a big problem, trying to lay off the better guys in the back end then. And that's why you had so many games being lost by the middle innings, and why you had players riding that shuttle, and they were desperately looking for relievers to seize that opportunity, as Buck kept saying. So to have Britton back and a healthy O'Day with Brock, with Givens, and as they're hoping, like you said, Donnie Hart and Richard Blyer, who's been really good for them. I think he's only let 2 of 17 inherited runners score. That suddenly becomes a very solid bullpen, and it does take some of the heat off the rotation.
Roch, give us a scouting report on tonight's starter, Wade Miley. How has the season gone, and what can the Orioles expect from him?
Well, I'm sure they'd like to get more than 5 innings out of him. I mean, that's been the big problem. He's worked 5 innings or less than 9 of his 15 starts. Now, of course, that includes the one start where he got hit by the 2-line drives against the White Sox, only went 2/3. But nonetheless, he has trouble getting past 5 innings. That's because the pitch count, the number of base runners. I had people ask me, well, why was his ERA so good earlier in the year and it's not now? Well, he was putting guys on base the same regularity as he was before and what he's doing now, but he was getting out of those jams earlier. And you figured eventually that was not going to continue. It was amazing how many base runners he would put on, and yet only not allow X number of runs. Eventually that catches up to you. And he has these high walk totals, and he's not a guy, I don't think, that when you watch him, you think, man, he's missing by a lot. But he is barely missing. He's not going to groove one down the middle of the plate, and he doesn't get those close calls. And all of a sudden, you look, he's got 5, 6 walks. That's been a big problem for him. That's why the pitch count's been up. And when he ranks like second in the majors in pitches thrown per inning with 19, Gosman's first 19.1. He's third in pitches thrown per batter with 4.18. So obviously he's running up his pitch count. And by the 5th inning, you're already looking to see who's warming up. So they need to get him deeper. They need to keep that pitch count down, and obviously limiting the walks will help. But he's been putting a lot of guys on base this year, and eventually that's going to bite you.
Roch Kubatko, MASNsports.com. Thanks a lot, Roch.
All right, thanks, guys.
Pitching matchup tonight.